Welcome, Algebra 1 class. It's time again for some chapter 6.4, writing linear equations like y equals mx plus b. We started with that, finding the slope, that's the m, and then the b, which is the y-intercept. You know, like the intercept, if you're going to intercept the football, right, the y-intercept is where it hits the y-axis. So what we're going to do is we're going to start this puppy off with page 250. It's example number 1 in your book, so follow along, right? The first thing they give us is they give us the slope. It's 2/3, right? That means that you're going to go up, rise up 2, and then to the right 3. So rise over run, 2/3. That's the steepness of the line. That's your m value. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, but my hair is a little long because I've been quarantined and haven't been able to get a haircut. All right, my y-intercept is at 0. That's key. It'll always be at 0 comma something, 0 comma -5. The -5 is where it hits the axis, the y-axis down there, but there has to be a 0. If there's no 0, then it's not a y-intercept. All right, so we got y equals mx plus b. My m value is the slope, so I'm going to plug that puppy in right there, and then my y-intercept goes right there in for b, and when you do that, you get y equals 2/3 x minus 5. That's the y-intercept at -5. That's the slope there at 2/3. Are you with me? By the way, did you know that wombats, they poop squares? They like little cube squares. That's gotta hurt. Good golly. All right, example number 2. Page 250. Are you with me, my friends? This time, they're giving you a point, an x and a y, but it's not a y-intercept. Oh, no. Oh, snap. Right? The x value is 1. It needs to be 0, and it's not. So this isn't a y-intercept. This isn't a b value. It's just an x and a y, a random x and a y. So what we can do is they give me my slope of 3, but they don't give me my y-intercept. So I have to put my slope of 3 in. I can put my point of my x and my y in for my x and my y. My x value is a 1, my y value is a 5, so plug in 1 for x, plug in 5 for y, but do not plug anything in for b, because we don't have a y-intercept. We didn't have a 0 comma something. All right. Boy, this is itchy hair. When I plug those numbers in, 5 and 3 and 1, when I plug them in, 5 and 3 and 1, I multiply 3 times 1, right? 3 times 1, my slope times my x. You get 3. So 5 is equal to 3 plus b, right? And when you subtract 3 on both sides, you're going to get b is 2. That means my y-intercept is 2, and I can go ahead and plug it back in. Y equals 3x plus 2. My 3 is my slope, 2 is my y-intercept. Whew! I'm just working up a sweat there, cowboy. I think I need a hat. Okay, that'll help keep the hair out of my face. Got me my cowboy hat. Yeehaw! Let's go ahead and move on to the next piece here. Oh, by the way, as we move on, we're going to move into example number 3 here. And before we start, did you know that Reno, Nevada is further west than Los Angeles? I bet you didn't know that! All right, example 3, y equals mx plus b. We always start with that. My y value, my m value is my slope, my x value, and my b value, my y-intercept. But in this case, they give me a point of -5, 6. That's not a y-intercept. It's a point. It's a coordinate. It's an x and a y. And then I give me a slope of a -1/2. I can plug the -1/2 in, but the -5, 6 has to go in for the x and the y. The x value is the -5. The y value is the 6. When I plug that in, I have a little bit of a problem. You see, I plugged in -5 here. I put it over a 1 because it's like a fraction here. And when I multiply, it makes it a little easier to multiply, putting it over a 1. When I do that, if you notice, I get a denominator of a 2 here, right? Positive, because negative times negative is a positive. I get +5/2. But how's that going to work? I have to have a fraction. I need that to turn into a fraction so I can subtract it. Well, 6 is the same thing as 12/2. If I wanted to have a denominator of 2, get a common denominator of both having 2's, a 2 here and a 2 here, then that's going to make that 12/2. That's the same thing as 6. And when I subtract 5/2 off both sides, I'm going to end up getting that b is 7/2. That's my y-intercept now, so I can go plug it back in. I can plug my b value of 7/2 right there, and I can plug my -1/2 as my slope. Yeehaw! Go ahead and move on to number 4. By the way, here's example number 4. Did you know that the average person in a lifetime, they collect enough spit, saliva, to fill 2 swimming pools. That's 25,000 quarts worth of spittle. That's a lot of spittle. All right, let's keep this going. Example 4 says y equals mx plus b. So we start with, but they gave me a point. Again, not a y-intercept. It doesn't start with a 0, right? It started with a 1. My x value is 1. My y value is -6. I can plug it in for an x and a y. That's it. So I plug in my x and my y. I have a 1 and a -6. And then my slope is 0 this time. That's going to be kind of cool because it's going to multiply by 0. When you multiply by 0, it just cancels it out. That tells me my b value is just going to be -6 because the m and the x just vanish when you multiply by 0. If your value for b, your y-intercept is -6, you can plug that value in, right? Y equals mx plus b, mx plus b, and you end up getting y is equal to -6 because the 0 is out right there. Y is just equal to -6, and we're done with that one. Moving on! By the way, did you know that there's 700,000 words in the Bible? 700,000! That's a lot of words! Okay, keep this going. Example number 5, page 251. Follow along with me in the book. Right? They give me 2 points this time. Oh, snap diggity. This time they don't give me a slope and they don't give me my y-intercept. They give me 2 coordinates, an x and a y. They give me a first coordinate, x and y, and then a second coordinate, x and y. So I'm going to label this 1, 3, my first x and my first y. x1, y1. I don't know if you can see that. x1 and y1. And then I'm going to label my second coordinate, which is going to be this one right here, my 4, my -2, as my x2, y2, meaning my second x and my second y. So I've got my first x and first y, second x, second y, and I have to go use the slope formula. Oh yeah, that's right. M, that's the definition for slope, is slope, and that's y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. That's got to be memorized, peeps. Please go memorize it. You got to do it. So when you do that, you're going to plug them into parentheses. Right? I'm going to put little blanks, little parentheses blanks, and you're going to plug those values, the first x, first y, second x, second y, you're going to plug them in. So if you notice, my y sub 2, that means the second y value. I'm going to plug in my second y value of -2 in there. Right? Down the bottom here, x sub 2. Well, x sub 2 is right here, 4, so I plugged in 4 for my x sub 2, right? And then I plugged in my y1 and my x1, and I put them in there, and when I subtract -2 take away 3, that's a -5 on the top, 4 take away 1, that's a 3 on the bottom. So my slope is going to be going down 5 and over 3, okay? So I can plug that in now. I can plug my value for slope in, -5/3. This line's going down. It's got a down and very negative slope. But I got to find my x and my y here and my b value. I don't have a b value. They don't give me anything that starts with 0. But I can plug in one of my x's and my y's. I'm going to plug in the 1, 3. I can plug either one of those points in, by the way. I have 2 sets of x's and y's. But the first set of x's and y's doesn't have any negatives. It's better. 1, 3. So I'm plugging 1 there, 3 there. And when I plug in 1 and 3 and my slope, right, I end up getting this mess, which I have another fraction right there, my -5/3. When I multiply by 1, I just get -5/3, but I can't solve for b if I don't get a common denominator. So I got to get that 3 to have a common denominator of a 3. Right? I need a denominator of a 3 too. So to turn a 3 into thirds, that's the same thing as 9/3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 3 is the same thing as 9/3. I have to have it in thirds because that's in thirds. And when I want to solve for b now, I'm going to add 5/3 to both sides. So I add about 5/3 to both sides. Let's go ahead and do that up here. If I take my 9/3, my -5/3, my b, if I add the 5/3 to both sides, I'll get 14/3. That's my b value. That's my y-intercept. So I can plug it back in. I have a slope, which is my -5/3. I have a b value, which is positive 14/3. I can plug that in for my m and my b right there. Y equals -5/3 x plus 14/3. And that's my slope-intercept form. My y equals mx plus b. And that does it. And so what I want to do is I want to sing you out here as we leave with a little song I created. I'm going to dedicate this one to my buddy Liam. A minor,